The train jolted to a stop, and the wooden doors were thrown open to floodlights, shouting, and barking dogs. Eva Mozes Kor was 10 years old when she and her twin sister, Miriam, were dragged down from a cattle car at Auschwitz-Birkenau in May 1944. They had stood for days in a packed boxcar with almost no water, breathing stale air and the sweat of strangers. When the doors opened, cold night air hit their faces like a slap, carrying the bite of coal smoke and a stench Eva could not name. Guards drove the crowd forward with screams and blows. People stumbled onto the ramp clutching bundles, children, and each other. Eva's fingers locked around Miriam's hand, terrified that if she let go for even a second, her sister would vanish into the moving mass. Searchlights swept over faces. A quick glance from an SS man decided who stepped left and who stepped right, and those choices decided who lived and who died. Eva had come from Ports, a small Jewish farming village in what is now Romania. Her father worked land he loved, and her mother ran the household with steady hands and sharp instincts. As persecution tightened, their family was forced into a ghetto and then onto the train. By the time Eva reached the selection line at Auschwitz, she already understood fear, but she did not understand the speed of it. She watched her parents try to keep all 4 daughters together, her mother pulling the older girls close, as if her grip could hold back the camp itself. Someone in uniform leaned forward and asked the question that tore their family apart. "Are they twins?" The answer came, and Eva and Miriam were yanked out of their mother's grasp. Their mother reached for them, crying out, but the line surged and guards forced space between them. Eva remembered her mother's arms stretched toward them as the crowd swallowed her. It was the last time Eva ever saw her parents or her 2 older sisters. Being a twin did not mean safety. It meant value. The girls were marched away from the main lines into a separate world inside the camp, a place where children like them were kept alive for one reason. Dr. Josef Mengele wanted them. Mengele was a camp doctor who used twins as living material for experiments tied to Nazi ideology. Eva and Miriam were not treated as children. They were treated as specimens. They were stripped, shaved, and given numbers. Their names mattered less than the digits on their arms and the files built around their bodies. The first days came in fragments, a bunk crowded with other children, the smell of sweat and disinfectant, the sting of rough soap on raw skin, and roll calls that seemed endless while guards counted and recounted them in the open. Hunger settled into Eva's stomach and never truly left. The twin barracks offered slightly better rations than many other prisoners, but it was not kindness. It was maintenance, enough to keep them usable. Days fell into routines designed to erase time. Eva and Miriam were marched to rooms where they were examined for hours, sometimes left naked while adults in white coats measured every visible part of them. Arms were stretched and held, legs positioned, heads turned, and numbers written down. On other days, they were taken to a blood room where their arms were tied tight and needles were pushed in. Blood was drawn and recorded. Sometimes Eva was injected with unknown substances. No one explained what was being tested. Questions were met with a hard stare or a shout to stand still. Eva learned to read the smallest signals: a guard's mood, a doctor's impatience, the moment a door closed that meant she had to keep Miriam within reach. She saw other twins return with swollen limbs, bandages, or blank stares. Some children disappeared after test days and never came back to the bunks. At night, Eva and Miriam whispered promises to stay alive and stay together, holding that vow like a rope in the dark. After a series of injections, Eva's body began to fail. Fever hit hard and fast. Her skin burned and her joints swelled until the pain felt lodged inside her bones. She could not stand without collapsing. She was taken to a hospital barracks where the sick lay packed together, too weak to move, the air heavy with sweat and infection. A camp doctor told her she had 2 weeks to live. Eva understood what he meant when he said that if she died, Miriam would be killed too, so their bodies could be compared after death. In that moment, survival stopped being an abstract hope and became a direct order she gave herself. Eva refused to accept it. She later described fighting to live 1 hour at a time, then 1 day at a time. When she could barely move, she dragged herself toward water because she believed dehydration would finish what the injection started. A prisoner nurse took a risk and offered small help when guards were not watching. Eva clung to Miriam's face in her mind, to the sound of her sister's voice, and to the simple thought that surviving meant keeping Miriam alive too. Slowly, the fever broke. Eva lived. Miriam survived those months as well, but the experiments did not leave her untouched. In later years, Miriam suffered severe kidney damage that Eva believed traced back to what had been done to them as children. Inside Auschwitz, there was no diagnosis, no explanation, only the evidence of pain. Eva watched her sister's hands shake after blood draws and saw how Miriam's strength rose and fell in waves. They stayed close because separation could be fatal in a place built on division. As 1944 turned into 1945, the camp grew louder with distant explosions that were not thunder. The guards grew harsher, the rations thinner, and the atmosphere more frantic. Many prisoners were forced onto death marches as German forces retreated. Eva and Miriam were small, exhausted, and still recovering from illness, and they remained behind with other weak prisoners when the marches began. On January 27, 1945, Soviet soldiers entered Auschwitz and found thousands of prisoners still alive among the ruins. Eva remembered the sudden absence of shouting and the strange quiet that followed. Liberation did not feel like celebration at first. It felt like disbelief. She and Miriam were children without parents, without sisters, without a home to return to as it had been. Their bodies were underfed, their mouths cracked from hunger, and their minds were full of images they could not push away. Recovery was slow. Hospitals offered food, blankets, and medicine, but they could not erase what had been done. Eva and Miriam returned to Romania and lived with an aunt, trying to sit in classrooms and behave like ordinary girls, while carrying memories that made them feel older than their age. In 1950, they left Romania for Israel. Years later, Eva built a life in the United States, raised a family, and began speaking publicly about Auschwitz and about how twins had been targeted for Mengele's experiments. She founded Candles, a museum and education center in Indiana, to preserve testimony and confront denial with facts. She insisted on concrete truth. Auschwitz was not an idea. It was a place where real children were measured, injected, threatened, and treated as disposable. Eva's survival did not come from luck alone. It came from stubborn choices made inside a system designed to destroy her. From the bond that kept her tied to Miriam, from small acts of help offered at enormous risk, and from the timing of liberation before her body gave out. She survived Mengele's attention, she survived illness meant to kill her, and she survived long enough to walk out alive and tell the world exactly what had been done. Key dates and the outline of Eva and Miriam's deportation, selection as twins for experiments, and the January 27, 1945, liberation matched established historical records and survivor profiles. Thank you for listening to Horrifying Survival Stories. Subscribe for more stories of those who faced the impossible and lived.